pre-meeting. It's going to be very quick, probably. We have an agenda review. But I did get asked by Kyle, we do have a 5th Tuesday this month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely want to probably let the incoming mayor make the decision, but have the conversation. I don't think we need to meet, but I certainly want to give that to that thought between. I know Amber said she was going to be gone, and I certainly don't want to overstep as the mayor's coming in to have that conversation, because he'll be mayor in a few moments. So I don't know, open that up, I guess, for discussion. I don't think we need to meet, do we, Carter?
Was there a reason you wanted to have a meeting?
Oh, no.
Okay, very good. That takes care of that. As far as I'm concerned, we won't have one. I enjoy the 5th Wednesday or Tuesday. Shit, I'll get the right
Like,
day.
what happens on Wednesday?
It's the day after Tuesday.
And you don't think we need anything this month to meet up, Carter?
Mr. Mayor-elect, I'd say we probably don't have any pressing needs that I'm aware of at this point in time.
Okay.
That 5th meeting.
Is council okay with not meeting that 5th one?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know at one time, what's it been? Well, the last time we had a 5th Tuesday month, we wound up with some meetings scheduled that week that weren't council meetings. I think it was a finance committee and something else. And I asked at that time if we could try to leave that week free, because I knew that there were a lot of people that basically, that's the only time throughout the year
Right.
that if you really try to make all the meetings, that you can wind up with about 12 days of free span in between meeting and meeting. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
So the only thing we really have on our pre-meeting is our agenda review, and Carter, I'm gonna kind of give that to you and see if you have anything you'd like to go over.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Tonight is going to be fairly rote and routine. We do have a number of ordinances that are kind of continuing their trajectory, and of course, one that will be starting its trajectory this evening, but nothing that we haven't talked about in some detail or that you would be largely aware of, particularly as it relates to the typical things we need to do at this time of year, like the paper of record and depositories and those kinds of things. So I don't think we have anything too worrisome to go over in this part of the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions about this meeting in particular? If not, we will be doing the oaths of office, which is pretty well scripted. And Amanda, you're going to be doing the oath? You will. Okay, Amanda will be doing the oaths for the incoming mayor and vice mayor. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
All righty. We'll take a short recess for 3 minutes. Then we'll come back.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones. Council meetings are live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. I now call the January 2nd, 2024 regular council meeting to order. Please note that Councilor Bond is attending the meeting virtually. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Councilors Jensen and Sutherland.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Kathy, second by Councilor Haskins. All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Councilor Bond, you want to give up?
Sorry. Thanks, Councilor Bond.
Bond voting aye, and all other councilors voting aye. The motion passes.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the January 2nd, 2024 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
Point of order.
Oh, do we need to do this? Oh, Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almost
Thank
forgot
you,
the most important part. Let's redo the bills and claims. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the January 2nd, 2024 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Pollock, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Any abstentions or nays? All voting aye, say aye. Please report.
Counselor Bond voting aye. Counselor voting aye, the motion passes.
Thanks, Councilor Bond. As stated in the rules of the council, the mayor is elected by the city council from their members. Interested members submit their names as candidates for mayor and vice mayor of the council at a meeting near the end of the calendar year. An informal and non-binding straw poll is taken by secret ballot at this session. The votes are turned over to the city attorney and the city clerk to count and announce the results. After the vote for mayor, a second straw poll is taken to elect the vice mayor. At the first official council meeting of the year, the prior year's mayor steps aside and the council formally votes on the new mayor and vice mayor. At this time, council will select the mayor for the calendar year 2024. The chair would entertain a motion to elect Councilor Cathy as mayor of the city of Casper for calendar year 2020. Moved by Councilor Pollock, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Any abstentions or nay votes?
Say,
Okay, all voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Counselor Cathy abstaining and Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next order of business will be for council to elect the vice mayor for the calendar year of 2024. The chair would entertain a motion to elect Councilor Inga Bretson as vice mayor of the city of Casper for calendar year 2024.
so moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor or Mayor. I guess you haven't been sworn in yet.
No, I'm still a
Councilor
counselor.
Cathy, seconded by Councilor Pollock. Any abstentions or nay votes?
I'd like to abstain.
All voting aye, say aye. Please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Inga Bretson abstaining and Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, the city clerk will now issue oaths of office to our mayor and vice mayor.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
I solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming,
and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming,
that I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment,
that I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment,
or caused it to be done by others,
or caused it to be done by others,
and that I will discharge my duties of office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Any money?
We're sitting in chairs.
This is my copy. Well, first of all, before I make any comments, would the outgoing mayor like to make any comments?
You know, I certainly just want to say a couple things. Thank you, Mayor. The first thing is that I decided to take this interim period for one reason and one reason only, to get us back on track, to make some normalization again, what we were trying to do. And that's all I wanted to do. Be the most boring mayor the city had ever seen. So I think I accomplished that. But it's been a pleasure to do that again, and it's great to sit in the seat as a council member. It's always an honor to be able to do that as a councilor. And I look forward to working with the mayor and the vice mayor and the rest of the council to continue to do the work of the city. So thank you so much.
And from my perspective, I would like to thank former Mayor Pacheco for taking that interim position. He did quite well at doing exactly what he said he hoped we could do. So I was glad to see that and very level and evening. So thank you for that. While I'm here, I would like to introduce my wife, her good friend and ours, Nana, my wife, Vicky, my son, Justin, and my grandson, Peyton. So thank you guys for being here. And probably watching on YouTube would be my other son and his family in Houston. So thank you to them as well.
I would just like to thank everybody for putting me in, and I look forward to working for the city.
And I appreciate the confidence the council members had to elect me, and we will go from there. And hopefully we can have another quiet, peaceful year. So, any other comments anybody would like to make? Thank you all. Appreciate it. It's quite an honor, and it's quite a privilege to be sitting here. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We will continue on with communications from persons present. Now is the time we invite anybody in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to the public to allow them time to voice their concerns. Therefore, council will not take communications under advisement, but if they choose to respond, they will do so at a later time. Please state your name, direct all questions, comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal obscenities or threats will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. If council chooses to address these matters, it will be done during the introduction of measures and proposals by council at the end of the meeting. And I'm the one that forgot to turn the phone off. So if council chooses to address these matters, it will be done during the introduction of measures and proposals by council at the end of the meeting. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes and no time extensions will be permitted. Please note that public hearings and ordinances each have their own comment period. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to council this evening? None appearing, we will continue on. I think. Please read the consent agenda items by title.
Establishing January 16, 2024 as a public hearing date for consideration of a transfer of ownership interest and name change for retail liquor license number 10 from Armour's Restaurants Incorporated doing business as Silver Fox Steakhouse located at 3422 South Energy Lane to Silver Fox Restaurant and Lounge doing business as Silver Fox Restaurant and Lounge located at 3422 South Energy Lane. The transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 15, Wyoming Liquor LLC doing business as Wyoming Discount Liquor located at 4330 East 2nd Street. The transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 22, Wyoming Spirits Incorporated doing business as 2nd Street Liquor and Wine located at 939 East 2nd Street, Suites 300, 400, and 500. The transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 7, 129 Hospitality LLC doing business as C85 The Branding Iron located at 129 West 2nd Street, and the transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 29, Double C Hospitalities LLC, doing business as C85 Gallus Liquor Mart located at 748 East Dalston Highway.
The chair will entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved. Second.
Any abstentions or nay votes?
Like to abstain from all items.
All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Counselor Pollock's abstentions noted, and with Counselor Vaughn voting aye, and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Need to do a little easier next time. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 13.03 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding utility billing and collection. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Jill Johnson to Jane Carter Napier dated December 21st, 2023. And exhibit number 2, Casper Star Tribune, proof of publication, published on December 26th, 2023. And that's all.
Thank you. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the council. Council's had the opportunity to review the proposed changes that this ordinance contemplates and suggests for your formal adoption. Furthermore, staff received some feedback from you that we tried to incorporate into the body of the language of the ordinance that we discussed with you as well in a separate work session and gathering to go over those changes to make sure they met your approval. A couple of the larger ones that were brought forward and you will see as change in this ordinance. One of which would be with regard to the goal that we had to try to reduce the amount of paper and costs that we incur from a postage standpoint. Council gave us at least a provisional blessing to starting July 1st, require customers to sign up and require that they be billed a hard copy or otherwise suggest that they be billed paperless so that we could hopefully increase the amount of paperless bills that we send out on a monthly basis. One of the other changes that we also discussed in the pre-meeting on this matter was with respect to tightening up the appeals process. That appeals process is now going to go through the finance director and myself, the city manager's position, instead of through a third-party committee. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we would defer back.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. At this time, I would ask, council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask that those individuals who wish to speak in favor of an ordinance amending chapter 13.03, please approach the lectern. Those in favor? None appearing. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to an ordinance amending chapter 13.03 to please approach the lectern.
Mr. Mayor, council, didn't want you to go. I looked in the packet. I didn't read it extensively. So I mostly decided I'd come down, make a couple comments, and there wasn't much discussion about the meat and potatoes that are in this. So if you care to respond and my concerns are off base, please point that out. But the immediate thing I thought of was that as I understand it, you're on the verge of making landlords responsible for the utility usage of their tenants. And if their tenants choose not to pay for whatever reason, landlord's going to be on the hook for part of that. And I heard you mention an appeal process, so I haven't looked at any of that. But I just want to bring up the obvious. If somebody's moving out of a rental, lots of times it's because there's been conflict of some sort. And so tenants many times do many injurious things to the property on their way out. They might think they're getting a raw deal from their landlord, whatever, but lots of times there's conflict there. And so I guess I just want you to think about if you're putting the landlord on the hook for the utility usage of an irate tenant, think about how much water can run through the taps as the tenant's on their way out. If you open your taps and leave them running for 30 days, that is going to be a huge bill that the landlord is now going to be on the hook for. And I can tell you there are spiteful people and vindictive people that would do just that in order to make a point as they go out the door. So, like I say, I haven't read the whole thing or even much of it, but this just seems to me like you're getting away from the concept of individual responsibility on the tenant. And now in order for the city to theoretically make it easier for them to collect on the utility costs, that you're shifting that to the landlord. And that just seems to me that's the wrong way to go as a general concept. So that's my comments for this week. And thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? There being no others to speak for or against the ordinance, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is that better?
Be a smidge harder next time. Somewhere between the two.
Somewhere between, okay. Very good. We'll get this done for you. Please read the ordinance by title only.
Amending chapter 13.03 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding utility billing and collection.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mayor,
Yes.
I, to Mr. Goodenough's comment, I just wanted to kind of refresh our thinking about, because I remember that very question came up in some of our initial discussion, I believe. So if I don't know if any of the other council members or if particularly the vice mayor, if you have any perspective on that concern that you could share in terms of from a landlord perspective, is that an alarming concern that we got to consider more deeply?
So I did vet through a lot of questions between Jill and Carter and asking them all kinds of questions. To the commenters' comments, a lot of cities unfortunately are going this direction. And so it's just the direction I think that most cities are going to. I'm not going to say that I'm not concerned on how we're going to navigate through this with the tenants. And so it's going to require property managers to have a lot more skin in the game, and then trying to be a little bit more proactive with the tenants and doing your inspections and things like that. So it's going to definitely change the dynamics quite a bit. And so in order for the owners not to be stuck with the bills, we have to just make sure that the tenants are covering their bills sufficiently. And then supposedly they've got that deposit, but that's if they're good paying tenants for a year, they get that deposit back. So I'm not sure it's a whole new landscape that we're going to be navigating through. You know, I think that it's a possibility. Tenants do things anyway. So it's just another piece of the puzzle that we're going to need to navigate. A lot of other towns and things though, however, do flat out put the owners, full responsibility onto the owners.
Councilor Gamero.
Thank you, Mayor.
I guess I got two questions, I think. But first off, I would just like to appeal, thank you for Mr. Goodenough speaking, on the topic this evening. I would like to appeal to, um, property owners, landlords. I haven't yet seen any correspondence come through our email inbox. Haven't had anyone grab me, or call me or anything like that. I would really like more feedback on this, especially as it pertains to the property owner and landlord perspective of things. Obviously, as residents and renters, there's plenty of us that can attest to that side, but not having any other property owners that I'm aware of in the room, I'd be curious, Vice Mayor. I know some property owners, lots of property owners, I don't know what the share of them are, but already choose to include utilities in their rent. And so do you mind giving me some perspective, if you can, on what are the benefits of a landlord? Is that more attractive from a, you know, a marketing kind of perspective to get people into the unit if you include utilities? What are the benefits, I guess?
Rarely do people include utilities, and typically the only time that you have utilities included is multifamily, because you've got metered. So you've got just one gas meter, one electric meter, one water meter. And so a lot of owners opt to just pay for the utilities, but it's very rare that they do. Tenants have zero, they don't take much responsibility at all. So there's nothing for them to just leave the water running 24/7 because they're not paying the bill. And they let the toilets run, they let sinks run. So it is in the best interest of owners to allow the tenant to have the utilities in their name. Therefore, they're more responsible with their utility usage versus if it's all just paid for, because at that point, then there's no incentive to keep your heat down, turn your lights off. You're responsible of using water.
Thank you. And maybe this is a question for Carter, speaking to kind of the philosophical belief that an individual's utilities shouldn't be the burden of another person's. Carter, do you mind explaining to me? So these unpaid utility charges, I think our memo has the most recent ones. I was referring to an article from last year for my figures, but it's somewhere $600,000-700,000 in unpaid charges that we send to collections. The collection agency takes a 24% commission on top of that. So that's roughly the figures that we're looking at. Those unpaid. Do you mind explaining to me, who's naive, about how like that works in terms of like a write-off, or what impact does that have financially to the city? How does the city compensate with that? In our enterprise fund for water services, for instance, those hundreds of thousands of dollars that we did not collect in utility bills, does that have to be absorbed by the fund through increased fees to other ratepayers? Do you mind providing some context? Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question, Counselor. I think it's a really good question. And as a matter of fact, I really appreciate you bringing up those numbers because that is what's vexing for the utility, for the enterprise. So those kinds of numbers are what council has seen in the past in terms of writing off bad debt. And when that happens, council, you're correct. That bad debt is basically absorbed into the rates. And so the only real disagreement that I would have with Mr. Goodenough's comments is that this isn't an issue with respect to the city having an easier job. It's an issue with respect to the ratepayers not having to absorb those kinds of dollars year in and year out. This is an opportunity that we are hopeful will give to the city and to the ratepayers another tool to try to reduce those bad debts that are written off by the city every year and the losses that the enterprise incurs every single year with respect to folks not paying their bills. And so that's what this is aimed at. And indeed, it is absorbed through the rates when in fact we're not successful in getting those bills remunerated.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councilor Pollock.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. City Manager, for that.
Wanted to dig just a little bit further into Kyle's line of questioning here. Looking at the chart in our memo, it looks like we've seen a relatively dramatic reduction in the total amount that we had to write off between fiscal year 22 and 23. Can you attribute that to any sort of trend, or was that just, sort of a fluke? The number looks a lot less concerning to me 23 than it did 22. Why? Was it just a random circumstance, or is there some sort of cause for that?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, thank you for the question. I would probably have to defer to Ms. Coyle here, who is with us tonight, to be able to answer a lot more technically difficult questions than I could. But I would ask you to keep in mind, we've had some rather unique circumstances occur over the last 3 or 4 years, not the least of which was COVID, wherein we were basically taking the position that most of the country was of not pursuing bad accounts and not trying to follow up on bills that weren't being paid and so on. And that took a period of a couple of years at least. And so I would suggest that any trajectories that you're trying to, put together in your mind, like I would, may not be as indicative as we've seen in years past, because we have, been dealing with partial years of efforts to try to collect on those kinds of matters. But beyond that, Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I defer to Brandy to help us through that a little bit?
Ms. Coyle, you're up.
Mayor, councilors, one of the other key pieces to the write-offs that you see in FY 22 is that we brought in our new software in 20, and we were not able to do a write-off in that year, and so it did include 2 years of write-off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion?
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you, mayors. I don't know if I'm following. Sorry, I might have misheard you right there. So the figures for fiscal year 23 are actually 2 years of data.
22
Oh, fiscal year 22?
for the write-off. So those higher numbers, the 184,000 grand total in FY 22 versus FY 23 was 178. With our new software, we were able to figure out how to do a write-off and get it off of our books, and we figured that out in FY 22.
Okay. So the $184,000 figure, that is a couple years of data. The 78,000 is kind of more typical. Okay. And then one more, if you don't mind, the 78,000 in write-offs for fiscal year 23. I know COVID threw a wrench in everything, and there was assistance to it pre-COVID. Is that kind of in line with what the trend was pre-COVID?
Mayor, Councilor, the write-offs are 5 years as well. So it would not have been affected, other than we might have been able to collect some of those funds during COVID if that hadn't have happened. But when we write something off, it's 5 years old at that point. We've already sent it to collections and tried for 5 years through the collection company to collect on it, and we're unable to. And at that point, we consider it unlikely that we'll be able to collect. And so those would have been 5 years old at that point.
Thank you. Sorry, I would like one more follow-up if you don't mind. So does that mean what fiscal year like 25, 26, our write-offs are potentially gonna be very different because all that assistance ended. Like I imagine we're gonna have a lot more. I was just reading a national headline about all of the debt that's accumulated for utility providers during the COVID era because there was assistance and people weren't, there was a federal mandate not to turn off people's services and stuff like that. So do you see that coming back to, us having to reconcile with that here in a couple of years then?
Mayor, councilors, FY 23 collections were also quite high. Those included years that we were able to send it to collections, which is outlined in the memo. But that number's pretty high. Those numbers has come down because we've actually been able to collect quite a bit. So now that we're sending it to collections, the collection company has been able to recover. I guess I don't have a number for you on what they've been able to collect, but that number is coming down. I do think that number is still going to be fairly high when we do end up sending it to, or writing it off in 5 years.
Thank you.
My statement will just be real quick. I think it's good policy for the city to be doing this because who shoulders this? It's the government that's gonna have to shoulder and subsidize these defaults. And I think when we look at and trying to be our fiduciary responsibility, and we talk about that and trying to be responsible with how we try to manage that, do we subsidize it? And how do we do that? I don't think we can continue to subsidize that. And so there has to be that outlet. And so to me, it makes sense through this ordinance that it has to go to the owners and the landlords and some mechanism to be able to recoup that so the government doesn't shoulder that. And so to me, it just makes good economic sense and policy. The flip side, the other side of it is I do agree that we are facing unprecedented amount of debt and people, just talking about this with the vice mayor, people struggling to make rent, people struggling to pay their bills. And we're seeing that more and more, especially with the way the inflation is increasing and rent is incredibly high across the United States. So we have to be sensitive to that. And it's a balancing act and it's not easy. But I think it's really going to be difficult for the government to be a city of Casper to be able to balance that and to shoulder that amount of debt. So to me, it makes good policy. Albeit I know that there are people that need support and help. I don't know how we get around that. So.
Councilor Askin.
So in looking at the paper in the memo, I just wanted to do a little clarification here. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking I'm sounding real smart. So the collections is what's in collections and the write-offs are what we have decided are never collecting, that's gone and forever gone. So that smaller number is not what we haven't written off and sent to collections. That's they're dead or we give up. So I think when everybody looks at this, you have to understand the number we're looking at in collections is almost $800,000. That's a lot. And collections, the ones that boast say maybe 25% is recouped. So that is a really, really, really lot of money that we are probably never going to get back. Whereas a landlord, I hate to say it, but that's what the security deposits are for. So we cross our fingers and hope if they got their city of Casper water back, that's because they're going to pay their bills. But at least there's that safety net of a security deposit that if they stiff the last water bill, hopefully they didn't also not pay power. But we do have to do something to cover ourselves. Otherwise, we're gonna all absorb those water bills. So I'm sorry to the landlords that are probably gonna send me nasty grants, but I do think this is probably our best option.
Mr. Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Haskins. I have a question about, and I guess I don't know who to direct this to. Maybe Lisa again. I hate to keep picking on you, but I know there's lots of nonprofits around the community, interfaith, churches, other organizations that provide utility assistance. If we were to pass an ordinance where the burden of that responsibility fell on the landlords and property owners instead, do they also have access to that same sort of assistance? My guess is that would I'm wondering if that complicates that, because there's a lot of folks that receive assistance on an individual level to help pay for the utility bills. And that probably helps us keep current on those bills. But if it reverts to a landlord or property owner, do they have access to those resources as well? That's my question, I guess.
We cannot legislate good behavior. We cannot make people pay their bills. And whether 100% of their stuff is paid for, even when they were getting rent, there were tenants intentionally skipping out on their utilities. It's, and security deposit, it doesn't cover much of anything. So a lot of this will fall directly on the owner, and no, they have no assistance whatsoever. This comes straight out of their pockets. And so that's when you have some owners that have property managers, it kind of puts the burden onto the property managers to try to manage it and then make sure that the utilities are being maintained, which is near impossible. And so, you know, that's what I've been asking, like with the city, and they just started doing some notifications. So I usually do a landlord agreement in my company name, and then we get a notification if the tenant isn't making the payment. So we can right away get a hold of that tenant and ask him, what's that kind of a scenario? We have that same thing through the gas company and then some through the power company. And that is really the only way that we're going to be able to manage this at all is, and then try to get a reading, an accurate reading. So as soon as the tenant gives us their 30-day move out, we've got an email from Jill to just immediately send that to, so that the city can immediately do a reading and get that bill to them a little bit quicker than waiting, because that was a question is that I had asked a tenant's moving out, the bill hasn't arrived yet. They've moved, the bill is now just hanging out there. And the way the ordinance reads is that unless the bill is paid, nobody else can turn the water on, which is preventing a tenant from moving in when a tenant moved out. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I have yet to really just fully figured out how to navigate all of this. It's going to be a lot more work on my end. That much I do know.
Any other comments? The one thing I would like to say is that basically that enterprise fund and the city is a business. And our business is to provide water to the citizens. And we as the city have to purchase that water from regional water. So any bills that we do not collect, we are actually paying regional water for that water. And I don't know of many businesses that can keep on paying to buy product when they aren't getting paid for the product they sell. And that's where we stand as a city. And then, as has been stated by the other councilors, that is then distributed amongst the ratepayers that are paying their bills, because we have to maintain our business. So that's where this all comes from as well. Oh,
Thank you. Could I just have somebody walk me through what the mechanism looks like? So we've got a tenant, it says if a tenant is delinquent and refuses to pay for services used, then the owner is responsible for the payment. What does that time frame look like? How long are we trying to get the tenant to pay for it before we are immediately reverting it, you know, to the responsibility of the owner?
Mayor and councilors, the ordinance is reading that we will send a delinquent notice to the owner or property manager, which will happen at the 30-day mark from the bill date. At that point, they are considered delinquent. And so that'll be mailed to the both parties. And at that point, if they're delinquent, the landlord will have the opportunity to contact us and say, shut their water off. That gives them that ability, which they do not have now. And then we will be looking at sending a notification for the ordinance. It would come from either the city manager or his designee, which will probably be Jill, I would imagine, a letter demanding payment. I shouldn't say demanding, but asking for payment from the property owner or property manager before we would look at sending it to collection. So you're looking at probably 30 days before we're asking for the payment from the owner and or landlord. But we're asking for payment from the tenant at 30 days. And then we'll be shutting them off anyway at 45 days. But we don't have to wait that extra 15 days until landlord calls and asks us to shut it off immediately.
Okay.
So the crux for us, however, is that for property managers, state statute says that we have to return 100% of their security deposits, whatever's left, to them within a 30-day time period. Which is why it's very concerning, because by the time they send us a letter saying, hey, they didn't pay the bill, chances are we've already given back the security deposit.
Councilors, Mayor, can I add to that? Jill and I had discussed how we would handle the final bill for the customers, so we would not prevent turning on the water for a new tenant. If one tenant moved out on the 30th of the month and the new tenant moved in on the 1st of the month, we would not prevent the new tenant from moving in and having water. But if that bill is not paid by the time that tenant moves out and the new tenant moves in, then we would be looking at collecting that at that time.
Any amendments? Thank you. You have an amendment?
No.
Do-
Could I give one more comment? And then we'll get on with the rest of our meeting. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I personally would really like to see more people show up at the second reading, or if you don't want to show up in person, send us emails or give us a call or something. I just am feeling uninformed myself on this one. I totally agree with Councilor Pacheco that it's an untenable position for us to be in. The fact that we have $800,000 in bills going to collections, and they're going to take their cut off the top of it, and they're only going to be successful with a certain amount of it. And, that's a good deal of money that I'm glad we kind of put it on the record tonight that that money that is not being collected is being absorbed by the fund that we all, as all the people that pay their bills in a timely manner, we are subsidizing that essentially. And so I think that's important for people to recognize that that's an issue that we need to try to solve. But I am also worried about the unintended side effects of placing the burden on the property of the landowner. I think you make a good point, Vice Mayor, that there's a level of personal responsibility when it's in your name. It's kind of your burden, but whereas if your landlord's covering it, that makes sense to me that you have less, you're less responsible. You might care less about how long that shower is, or whether you run that load of clothes a second time. So I guess I would I'm fine moving it forward on the first reading tonight. I'd like to see more people reach out to us because again, at least what I've been privy to, very few people have reached out and offered their feedback on this. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Back to my question, any amendments? None appearing, any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye. Aye. Please record the vote.
Councilor Bond voting aye and all the councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Is that any better?
Yeah, it looks actually.
Okay. Sounds good.
This one echoes more.
Yeah. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of a new restaurant liquor license number 52 for Frida's Mexican Restaurant. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Tremmel to Jake Carter Napier dated December 20th, 2023. Exhibit number 2, liquor license application filed November 29th, 2023. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website dated December 20th, 2023. And exhibit number 4, Casper Star Tribune proof of publication published on December 21st and 30th, 2023. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you. This is an opportunity for council to consider a new restaurant liquor license. Although there have been liquor licenses at this address with other businesses that have been in this location. Pursuant to the fact that council has essentially an unlimited amount of restaurant licenses that they have at their disposal. And given that this business appears to be meeting the requirements of the license, staff would recommend favorable consideration.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask that those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the new restaurant liquor license number 52, please approach the lectern. No. This time, since nobody appeared, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the new liquor license to please approach the lectern. There being no others to speak for or against the new restaurant liquor license number 52, I now declare the public hearing closed. Jeez. Yeah, laugh now. Thanks. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize new retail liquor license number 52 for Frida's Mexican Restaurant of Casper LLC, doing business as Frida's House Mexican Food located at 611 West Collins Drive.
Retail liquor license, and it's a restaurant liquor license.
Yes, sorry about that. It is restaurant.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do I have any discussion? Any absentees or nay? Abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye? Aye. Please record the vote.
With Counselor Pollack abstaining and with Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Oh, got another liquor license. Okay. Now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 13 for 307 Enterprise LLC. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor. We have exhibit number 1, correspondence from Floyd Trammell to J. Carter, December 20th, 23. Exhibit number 2, liquor license application filed December 20th, 23. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website dated December 20th, 2023. And exhibit number 4, Casper Star Tribune proof of publication published on December 21st and 30th, 2023. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The statutes would suggest that when ownership of a particular license is changed or is divided differently, then indeed the council needs to consider that transfer of ownership, even though the business isn't changing or whatever the case may be. In this particular circumstance, we do have a number of owners being brought into the ownership of this particular license. And accordingly, a transfer would be necessary for you to consider as a result. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we would defer.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. At this time, I would ask council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 13 to please approach the lectern. Anybody to speak in favor? At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 13 to please approach the lectern. Well, there being no others to speak for or against the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 13, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 13 for 307 Enterprises LLC doing business as The Range at 5150, located at 455 Thelma Drive.
1 second.
Any discussion? Any abstentions or nay votes?
If we're still on that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
I figured we were down to the vote. You missed all the discussion.
Okay.
So we were probably going to be okay. All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please record the vote.
With Counselor Pollock abstaining and with Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Third reading, please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
Amending chapter 2.64 of the Casper Municipal Code, removal or censure of public officials.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve and adopt on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are listed to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make comment on this ordinance? Any discussion amongst councilors?
Mayor. One thing, I just, as we're kind of wrapping up and as we're looking at how this started, in this conversation, I think it's imperative for us to have a mechanism for us to look at the removal of leadership positions for individuals that I think that certainly are not representative of what we are trying to establish as a group here up here, the council members, and what we do to represent our community. And so I think this is a good mechanism for us to do that. And while it was not an easy process as we went through it as a group, I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's the best thing for the community as we go through that. I know we're receiving several phone calls from several people asking, how do we get through this and removal of certain individuals? And we had no mechanism really other than a long drawn out process. I think this gives us some opportunity to have that mechanism. So I'm very much in favor of it.
Any other comments? I hope I survive after tonight. Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now consider the consent resolution. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
13A1, providing for the naming of legal depositories and investment firms for 2024. 13A2, rescinding resolution number 23-291, which authorized amendment number 1 to the employment agreement between the city of Casper, Wyoming and Robert J. Ham Jr. 13A3, authorizing amendment number 2 to the employment agreement between the city of Casper and Robert J. Ham Jr. And 13A4, authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services between the city of Casper and Keith Robert Young.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda items just read.
So moved.
Second.
City manager, would you like to comment on any of these items?
No, sir. Thank you.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
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 Please record the vote.
With Counselor Bond voting aye and all counselors present voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
14A1, acknowledging the receipt of financial disclosure information from city officials with public fund investment responsibility for calendar year 2024. 14A2, designating the Casper Star Tribune as the city's official newspaper for the calendar year 2024. And 14A3, approving the transfer of ownership interest for microbrewery liquor license number 7, Oil City Beer Company LLC, doing business as Oil City Beer Company located at 4155 Legion Lane, units 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Second.
Any abstentions or nay votes?
I'd like to abstain from item 14A3, please.
All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
And Counselor Hall's abstention noted and Counselor Bond voting aye and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
At this time, we ask councilors to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We have always started on the end, so you knew where you were going to be. We'll start with former Mayor Pacheco.
Sure.
And go this way around.
Love it. Thank you. Nothing, obviously we had a big long break, well, a week break, and so I didn't have a whole lot going on, but do have the rest of our Amoco Joint Power Board interviews tomorrow to wrap that up, to round out the interviews for those that are looking to be on that board. Councillor Pollock and I will be at that tomorrow. So looking forward to doing that. I want to just congratulate and welcome Mayor Kathy and Vice Mayor Ingebretson. And the greatest part about being a part of democracy and being a part of how you do a peaceful transfer of power and any notion, even the smallest area like this, is incredibly important. And the trust that we have with our constituents is very, very important. So I'm grateful of that, and I wish them well. They'll be my thoughts and prayers, and they have my 100% support and backing as they move forward in the work that they're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bond, you would be next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to offer my congratulations also to the mayor and to the Vice Mayor Ingebretson. Thank you for your service. I know you'll do a great job. I have a lot of confidence in both of you. And just to wish everyone happy New Year, and looking forward to getting back into the meeting schedules after the new year. Thank you.
Councilor Pollock.
Councilor Pacheco already gave you a preview of what my week looks like. So just those interviews for this coming week, and then that's really it. So I will get you our recommendations from that process within the next couple of weeks, I'm sure.
Councilor Gamrot.
Starting on the inside. I like it. I want to thank you to Visit Casper and 5150 Local for sponsoring the last couple weeks of ice skating at David Street Station this season. So from now until January 14th, all admission and ice skate rentals are free. Utility costs to maintain the outdoor rink, especially when it's as warm as it has been this winter, are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It's very expensive to maintain. And the nominal fees for ice skate rentals and stuff during the rest of the season don't cover the staffing, the supplies, and the utilities and everything else that it costs to keep that ice rink out there. So I know some folks would like to see the season extend a little bit longer, but especially now that kids are back in school, once kids go back to school, I mean, it really dies down there. And so just big thank you to Visit Casper and 5150 for helping us to extend that season a couple extra weeks. They have a glow skate, a princess and superhero skate, and some other cool events coming up. So I just ask you to maybe sneak in one more ice skating sesh before the end of the season, get your fill before we have to wait again for next winter. I believe, construction on Poplar Street between Collins and Yellowstone will begin on Monday. Is that correct, Carter? Okay, I saw Q2 publish it. I don't remember getting a city memo about it, but, so traffic is gonna be impacted, so please plan accordingly. If you, travel through this area by leaving your house earlier in the morning or seeking out alternative routes, just know that's probably gonna be, quite the impact, and, we're gonna be doing work in Poplar and along the interstate and stuff for a while now, so, just something we all have to get used to, but, and then, lastly, tonight, we once again established the Tribune as our official newspaper of record. Since this time last year, they've cut their printing schedule to 3 days a week. They no longer publish a Sunday edition, and they have moved from mail carriers to delivery by USPS, which in my opinion means they can't even qualify as a daily paper any longer. Milden bar none back in September amended their ordinances to lay the groundwork for moving away from publishing exclusively in the paper. And while I don't think that we should start moving down that road quite yet, I do just want to once again reiterate my support for their efforts and advocate to our state legislators, local and otherwise, to give us as municipalities more freedom and flexibility in regards to how we publish legal notices and archive the actions of our governments. Transparency and access to information for citizens is paramount. I agree with the Tribune and the Wyoming Press Association on that point. Where I disagree with them is the belief that the paper is the best mechanism to achieve those goals. So I would just like to throw that out there and reiterate again my support for the efforts to change that status quo. Thank you.
Councilor Haskins.
I'm gonna need to go before, okay? So I didn't have a whole lot. We had public health last week, but I did want to follow up, Carter, just to be clear, the LEWAP, the LEAP for the water, we are now, Casper now accepts that and we're in, right? Okay, so just as a piggyback for the water thing, we do have that opportunity.
It's done, isn't it?
It's not gone every year though, right? It's just gone for this year.
Mayor, councilors, they did not renew that funding for 2024. So it ended in August to apply for those funds. And I think we just received our last payment from them.
Well, never mind then. Their website's still taking applications, but okay, never mind.
They are taking applications for the energy side, but not for the water up in wastewater side.
Well, that was a great program, short-lived. That's all I have. I think we're good on that, right? I should stop now.
Vice Mayor.
Contractor board, we had no quorum, so, there was no meeting right before the new year, and then, went to Hall of Justice and the DOJ meeting this morning. It's always interesting of all of the things that come up with those meetings. So we've got some things that we're working through on those. And so I just want to wish everybody a very happy new year. And here we go again.
I also went to that Hall of Justice Detention Center meeting this morning, and as we have done here with the city, we're also dealing with old buildings on those two buildings and having to look forward to some potential large expenditures there, which we share with the county. So we will be looking at those and investigating those and figuring those into our upcoming budget. And beyond that, it was a great Christmas. Didn't quite feel like it because we haven't been out and shoveled 8 and 10 inches of snow so far this year, but it looks like we may be having that coming. To follow up on Councilor Gamaros's comment about Poplar Street, they are out marking utilities, so be careful because they are trying to cross back and forth across Poplar between Collins and the bridge, and sometimes they don't look both ways before they go out with their line locator and their paint. So be careful and try not to run over them. They do have orange vests and hard hats on. So be careful and drive safe through there. And next week we have, and we will be start getting into the College National Finals Rodeo. We will have our first meeting of the year next Monday on the 8th. So, and that will be coming up in June. So start getting ready and saving your pennies to buy your season tickets. My first plug for the rodeo. Thank you all. And again, I appreciate the support from the council and from the public for having elected me to council #1 and for you folks having in the faith of me being the mayor. I appreciate that. It is a very humbling experience and an honor. With that said, the next meeting of the city council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 PM next Tuesday, January 9th, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 PM Tuesday, January 16th, right here in the Lyric. And with that being said, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Any any abstentions or nay votes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.